Tafshin Peidalid. May this learning continue for us to see some great shefa from all other things, both personal, for our community, for our Am Yisrael.
Amen.
Bring back the Chatufim all alive.
Amen.
All the Chayalim come back to Shalom, to their house.
Yeah, I want to say Todah Rabbi Hashem for my son. All your tefillahs are appreciated.
He's got out?
Ben Eliezer Cohen, he's out.
He's out of
From
Gaza?
Aza, the whole Sanchenim made a big celebration at Techis
They
today.
all left.
They've done their shlichus. There's other units still carrying on, but they did their part. What they're going to do next, we shall wait and see.
Anyway, so may we all see great shefa like the Zera Shimshon promises, and Yeshuot.
That's a big thing, Aliyah.
Baruch Hashem.
He's in there for like 4 months.
Oh, it sounds good today.
Good. Anyway, so in this week's Parshat we have many options of things to learn. There are so many great.
Just raise your voice a little bit more.
Raise my
Sorry,
voice.
we haven't got the new mics
I
yet.
don't want to,
We've got them, but not the wires. A little bit.
Anyway, so this week we have a lot of great Torah to choose from. We're going to start with Jerush Zayin, the 7th one in the Zera Shimshon on Parshat Sisa.
It's after Pesach? The Nashon Pesach?
Yeah, I think it's after Haggadah Pesach. And that one I don't remember what page it's on.
Kitisa, okay.
Okay,
Which Jewish?
Jerush Zayin. So this one we're going to start with. For the two aliyot, the first aliyah Rishonah and the second aliyah in this week's part are the two longest aliyot in all of the Torah. If you look at the aliyot themselves, they're about, I think they're like 60 psukim each, maybe more. Anyway, they're very long. They kind of they talk about different things. But the first Torah, the first aliyah talks about Shabbat. At the end, talks about Shabbat, and that's how we learn the Lamed and Lachot of the Mishkan with the Shabbat, etc. Anyway, so we have the Zera Shimshon starts with a famous Gemara from Shabbat. It says Shabbat Perakol Kitvei in Daf Kuf Yudchet. It says Kol HaMe'aneg et HaShabbat Notnim Lo Nachala B'lo Mitzarim Shne'amar Nachalat Yaakov Avicha Lo K'Avraham Lo K'Yitzchak Ela K'Yaakov.
I guess this must be for Olam Haba. Because otherwise you have to say nobody's doing any Oneg Shabbos in the whole country because we have a lot of Mitzarim here.
Well, hold on a second, you'll see. That's what he says. Anyway, so he says is they said Loka Abraham, Loki Yitzchak, Eliki Yaakov, Be Ufarat Yama Vakedma. So he says, how do we? So he quotes the Gemara. The Gemara says anyone who's ma'aneg the Shabbat, who delights the Shabbat, ma'aneg is a pleasure on Shabbat. You receive Nachala B'lo Mitzarim. Means that you get a lot of shefa and all these good things. As it says, Nachalat Yaakov Avicha. And then the Gemara says, not Abraham, not Yitzchak, but Yaakov, as Hashem gives a bracha to Yaakov, it says, Ufarata Yama Bakidva Tzafon, meaning you expand out, you have a completely limitless amount of, or unlimited amount of shefa. So now he says, Ma'amar Azeh Kasheh Havana. He says, "Is this ma'amar, this whole little piece from the Gemara says, if we have a problem with it. De'chi tachen she'yeh le'echad nachala b'lo mitzarim. Dehainu b'li tchumim u'gvulin she'afilu yitnu lo kol ha'olam yu lo mitzarim u'gvulin. V'od im yu arbei she'yangu et ha'shabbat ech yuchel mitel ba'olam hazeh nachala b'li mitzarim b'chol echad ve'echad. Ve'en lomar de'mayri l'tovot ha'olam haba." So he says we have just the idea of calling it lo mitzarim. He says there's a problem with that. He says, how could someone have really boundless inheritance? How could you have someone so much bli mitzarim? He says it's impossible, right? Even if we give the entire world its inheritance, right? There will be some sort of border. There'll be, right? You have a lot of, your house is big, right? You're gonna have, your house is only so big, right? There's a certain line, right? Next person's house is so big, he's gonna also have a certain line, right? There's only a certain amount of space, every person's inheritance and shefa and bli mitzarim doesn't make sense. I used to have a teacher.
Oh, he didn't say Nachala Ein Sofit.
Right. So hold on.
Bli mitzarim.
Bli mitzarim.
No, mitzarim doesn't mean gvul.
Yeah, it does mean gvulot actually. Mitzarim,
really?
Yeah.
The pshat of mitzarim means gvulot.
Yeah. I used to have a history teacher whose daughter now lives in Neve Daniel. Who used to say
That's not the pshat. Mitzarim is gvulot.
Yeah, I think it is. I actually think it is. We can look it up. Anyway, so it says here. Yeah. So my history teacher used to say that the whole world, everything's issues, all the issues in the world are because of boundaries.
Because of what?
Boundaries. your boundary, your line, your property line, the state line is right, the wrong, the green line is this way, the green line is that way, whatever. Anyway, so he says as follows. So he says, if everyone was really to, mamash, respect the Shabbat the way they're supposed to, how is it possible that every person, Hashem is going to give every person, right?
Mm-hmm.
By default, everyone's is limited, right? In other words, you can't give everyone limitless because it doesn't make sense. So he says, "Ein lomar demayir b'tovat olam haba, din ken kamashma lo natin al achala." Right? It says is v'halu kol toch v'olam haba hem bli shur bli ktitzba olam shekuloto b'chol aroch olam en sof. So he says is it's not. If we say it's ground, if we're talking about olam haba, he says is maybe we could say is that maybe it's talking about olam haba, not olam hazeh. So he says is if we're talking about olam haba, we know olam haba is going to be without. There's olam haba makes sense. Olam haba is a wonderful place that really is reward. We're going to have there is no measure and limit in olam haba, right? So olam shekulo tov, kol aruch, everything is everlasting, ein sof, without end. So we know that it's not that. So it has to be olam hazeh. And if it's olam hazeh, how is it possible that every person is going to get bli mitzarim, meaning endless and impossible? Like he says it's physically impossible.
Yeah, in the physical world.
In a physical world, it's physically impossible. Ela העניין הוא שמידת החסד של הקדוש ברוך הוא היה רצונו להתפשט לטובת הבריאות עד אין חקר. אמנם מידת הדין מעכבת בידה ואינה רוצה שתתפשט כרצונה. So he says is the idea is that Hashem's kindness, Hashem's chesed, is that he wants to give us a bracha with ad bli dah. He wants to do it. The problem is that we have what's called midat hadin that runs around and doesn't allow the midat chesed to go without, with to endless.
There's the Elokim, there's the Torah.
Exactly.
The Torah is limited.
Exactly. Uraya davar. Masha. And he says, let's give you a proof. He says is Masha amru ravatim zir v'choram v'recha pasuk tzit'l chak hariel. He says, look at what it says in the Chachamim say in the Midrash and Bereshit Rabbah. It says tzit'l chak hariel. Whatever you gave us in Ishtefa, right? Hashem's Amidat Adin einam ma'akevet el ksheyesh mekatigim. So it says, he says is that basically Tigachak Ariel. He says whatever you gave with Shefa, right? Hashem's Shefa and Chesed knows no limit. The thing is that it's not Amidat Adin einam ma'akevet el ksheyesh mekatigim. But what you have is we have the Midat Adin restricts the ability of Chesed. Because why? Because we have people who are Mekatrigim, people who are angels that are basically trying to encourage not to give the bracha to someone. For example, as an example, you're meant to get, you did some amazing mitzvot and you're meant to get whatever the bracha is for that. So then the Mekatrigim say what? Oh, he doesn't deserve it. Look what else he did. He did something not so good.
Got angry, took a Lashon Hara.
Exactly, whatever it is. And then you say, okay, so that you have Mekatrigim. As we see with Yov, Dichtiv Maaseh Yadav Berachta Umiknei Parat Ba'aretz. He says, you blessed Yov's work and you gave the land. Shloki min ha'olam Ayidei Kitur Satan Yibei Dakol. Right? Then what happened? The Satan came around, and what happened? Yov lost it all. V'nimna mimenu ha'chesed, and the attribute of chesed basically withheld all the shefa that we were supposed to get. Now, so we're just a short Torah, but we'll get. I think it's a really good one. And now he says, "V'nam mekatrigim inam mosifim koach elek sh'adam noteh achar v'tav." This is page 322 in the article, and he says that the mekatrigim, the angels that are basically trying to limit what we can get, only when a person follows his ta'avot, like you said. V'anat gufo, and indulges in his pleasures of the body. Karutz v'chomer, which is fashioned in what? The chomer, which is clay. Lochen shenotel l'dvarim ruchanim l'hanat mishmato she'az ein lehem reshut yitkarev. So he's saying is that the mekatrigim, what happens? How does a evil force attach itself to us? It's based on our ability to when we lean into the desires or lean into physical things more than we should, in whatever that means. I'm not getting into details. It could be something. Every person has their own tavot and has their own things. The more we lean into those things, and the less that we. Or let's do it the other way. The more you lean into dvarim ruchaniyim, the less the mekatrigim can take into control. The more we can control our our midot, the more we can control our ability to focus our energies on dvarim ruchaniyim, on spiritual things, on positive things, the more chesed that you get. And you can look at it across the board. Whenever you see people who are involved in Torah, in chesed, in positive things, somehow their life always looks limitless. It looks like it's smooth. Are there things that they have trouble with? Absolutely. But they're when they're working and they're focusing towards positive things, Torah, mitzvot, maasim tovim, somehow it just goes. I can give you many examples of my own examples of people who just like you could just see they're just like you spend more time focusing on staying focused on Torah and good things. Somehow things just seem to work out.
Yeah.
There's always going to be challenges. No, God forbid. I'm not saying that it's just like smooth sailing. There's always challenges.
Is he talking like about a vera or just like a taiva? It's not a vera.
I don't think Averas do. I think he's saying he's like the more.
Melech Olam Brei Pri Adama.
Baruch Mechayei Hametim. Haven't seen him. All right. Anyway, so
1 month, 2, 3 months he was
at
here.
least.
So it's like our weaknesses, they basically activate the mekatreg.
Right.
Like our fall downs or the weaknesses, they
So for those who are
activate
not,
the
for
mekatreg.
those who are on 1 second, for those who are watching, we have a guest who hasn't been here. Not a guest, a regular person who used to come, an attendee, used to come for months, and then we haven't seen him for a few months. So we're just welcoming him here.
Yeah, very
Yes.
honored.
Yes, Geffen, you have a question.
Well, I mean,
I
I guess it's more just on the
town.
concept of a mekater.
Just met out
Like,
here.
Craig. Yes,
Mekater,
Craig.
right?
Lives here.
Oh, you live in Efrat?
Welcome.
Welcome.
But that at a certain point, if you recognize the validity of the point that they would otherwise be making, lehavdil, like you can hear it,
Right.
that hoda'ah seems like the tshuva that therefore would like unroot it. Like, so at what point is your own acknowledgement of that which they're saying about you correct? Sort of the
Well, what
thing that deletes.
I think he's saying, or if I understand your question, is you're saying is that once you recognize that the taga is there, right, or the mekatreg is there, which is like the negative force of what you're trying to prevent you from getting the shefa that you got. So if the mekatreg, acknowledging the mekatreg is one thing, but being able to completely avoid it is another. Right? Acknowledging it is one step, but recognizing it in another level, which is to say, how do I prevent the mekatreg from even getting into me? So that is what he's saying here is that the way to do that is to be focused on. He's going to get to the point where he says we focus on Shabbat, on the Oneg Shabbat. I'm not going to focus on Oneg Shabbat, right? When we look at it, he's going to get to a point which I think is mind blowing because it's really impressive. So he says is basically what he's saying is so far he's set up the point is that it says Kol Ma'aneget HaShabbat. I'm going back for Stephen to take. I'm channeling my inner Charles. Charles likes to do is every time a new person comes in, he starts
Gives a
again.
recap.
A recap, right?
Give
So
me a
I'm gonna
recap.
It's only 2 pages of a whole Torah is 2 pages, but I'm gonna recap anyway. So he says the Gemara in Shabbat says, "Kol Ma'aneget HaShabbat Nolino Nachalav." You get endless shefa, endless bracha.
No boundaries.
With no boundaries. The question is, how is it possible that everyone in the world can have endless boundary? Right? What's the biggest problem we have in this world? Boundaries. Right? The world boundaries are the problem. Right? Your house is on my line is the green line, the blue line, the yellow line, whatever you want to call it. Right? So we have this problem. And so he says, how is it possible? And we know that he's not talking about Olam Haba, because if we were talking about Olam Haba is Olam Shekuloto. Right? It's everything is endless. So it can't be Olam Haba. So it has to be Olam Hazeh. So how is it possible? So he says it doesn't make sense. And if you look, so he says is that it basically is, he says is that Hashem, in of himself, it only gives out chesed. He only gives good things. The issue is that we unfortunately have mekatrogim. We have evil people, kind of evil forces that are basically telling Hashem, don't give him. They're preventing us from getting it all. Hashem wants to give it more. But the problem is that we just don't have the ability because unfortunately we give into our tavot. We give into
We are
our,
producing those.
we're basically our own. We're basically we're battling on a daily basis, on a regular basis, our own desires and ability to give into those desires, and by doing that, we're basically preventing the shefa from coming in. So he says that the way to prevent it, the way to prevent these mekatrogim from coming in, is to continue to learn, to continue to focus on Torah and focus on spiritual matters, and then you're basically doing what your neshama is basically creating like a force field, a place that not allowing the mekatrigim in. And then, like I said before, but I said right before you walked in, as I said, is that we all see the people who are involved in chesed, in Torah, in good things, they somehow, it's just, their life is just, running like, I don't want to say smoothly, because everyone has challenges, but you just see that there's like a sense of bitachon, and the sense of like this, they felt like the sense of calm, right? So when we focus on it, that he says that's what happens is that when we don't allow, by doing these positive things and staying focused on Torah and spiritual things, then we don't allow the mekatrigim, these evil forces, to come in. And look what he says here. He says, "V'yom Shabbat mitchabim haklipot kivita b'zor Parshat Vayakel v'zeh mismor shel yom Shabbat v'yom sheshavtu hamazikim min haolam." So he says is, if you look in Parshat Vayakel in the Zohar, Parshat Vayakel, it says is that when it says v'yom, it says that on Shabbat, these klipot, these evil mekatrigim, go into hiding. As it says in the Zohar, that when it says v'zeh mismor shel yom Shabbat, on the day that these mazikim basically run away. They cease. Shavtu means they stop from the world. And we also, for those people who are daven nusach svard, it says, what does it say? Right? They run away. You look at read the Pegavna is that there's no
beautiful.
There's no evil forces on Shabbat.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Lachen diek lomar kol hamineged Shabbat. That's why it says. That's why the Gemara says whoever delights the Shabbat. Lo amar kol mishamer Shabbat. It doesn't mean anyone who observes the Shabbat. It means kol hamineged Shabbat. Why? It says afa pisha b'oning zeh hu notea achar anadat gufo. In kol zeh lo yosif koach l'chitzonim. What do we do on Shabbat? What are the things that we do on Shabbat? We eat more. We sleep more. We eat way too much. We sleep. We have a mitzvah to eat 3 full meals. On a regular day, most of us don't eat 3 full. Wash, eat, fish, meat, chicken soup, the whole deal. No, most of us don't do that every day. Only on Shabbat, right? 3 full meals, right? You wash, you eat like a king. You sleep more than you sleep probably. Like you take a nap. Most of us, right? There's a mitzvah to nap, right? Those are all desire. Those are all physical things. Those are mamish physical things. We're eating more. We're sleeping more. We don't need that spiritually. We don't need to sleep more, right? We're doing all these things. We're mamash ma'aneh. We're taking the physical things that we otherwise would call things that are preventing us from expanding our spiritual nature, and doing on Shabbat, which is the ultimate spiritual day, and turning them into spiritual things. Yes.
It's interesting to me that in Israel, or rather in Eretz Israel, there are certain physical things, mamash physical things, that are actually spiritual things. For example, walking around.
Walking?
Around.
Yeah.
Right? Every step is a mitzvah.
Right.
So it's not really surprising that, for example, sleeping on Shabbat is somehow a spiritual experience in addition to, or
Right.
rather...
Exactly. So here he's saying is that, exactly, he says that on Shabbat, we have all the things that we would otherwise during the week call physical things that detract us, and we're taking them and literally turning them around into spiritual things. And he says, that means even though that we're doing all these physical things that we would otherwise think that they're preventing us from growing spiritually, he's saying on Shabbat, there's no mazikim. There's no mazikim. You can do those physical things. He's saying this is the opportunity. Lo yeh reshut midat hadin la'akev al midat hachesed shelo tiyoshet alav b'shefer gadol. He says there will be no reshut, no midat hadin, no judgment on that day on Shabbat, and basically you'll have only chesed, only shefa. And he says here, basically what happens is he's saying is that mekatrikim will set. You will not have the ability to prevent the midat chesed, right? In other words, that will have no permission. The midat hadin has no permission to prevent. The mekatrigim will have no ability to prevent the shefer coming down on Shabbat. Moshe Yashul al mikneu parat ba'aretz and Yizkar.
By the way, that's what we say. It's me'en olam haba.
Exactly. It's exactly
Goes
right.
Back to that.
Exactly. He's about to get to that.
Oh.
Right. Exactly. He says go back to what we just said before about Eov. Eov said, "Milat parat mashma sheparatz kol hagvul netchumim." Right. All his things that Eov was blessed with so much shefa. Right. Mamash it broke the boundaries. And basically saying is that the term it broke the boundaries. Hashem's shefa chesed broke down the boundaries to Eov, and therefore that anyone who is mamash ma'aneg the Shabbat and takes those things that are oneg, we know those are oneg, right? Food is an oneg for most people. Sleep is an oneg for most people. And during the week, we would say those things are the opposite of spiritual things. We only take what we need. On Shabbat, you have the opposite mitzvah. You have the mitzvah to do is to take those things and turn them into oneg, into mamash, into oneg. Lo Avraham, and then we go back to. Now we go back to why does it say Avraham and Yitzchak, and why does it say not like Avraham and not like Yitzchak, only like Yaakov? And he says like this: Lo Avraham sheyatzam min Yishmael. What happened to Avraham? Yeah, Yishmael. Lo Yitzchak sheyatzam min Esav. Midat hadin hata lo ezatana lehem. For some reason, the Midat hadin was somehow mekatreg, or somehow was in charge, some charge against them. Elek Yaakov shaytam tetosh lema. Yaakov had complete all 12 of his shvatim, all 12 of his sons were completely flawless. Therefore, and then so he says is basically that's why Abraham, and that's why the Gemara says not like Abraham and not like Yitzchak, because they were for some reason they were limited in their ability to receive.
Because he gave Ishmael, came out of him.
That's exactly what he said.
It's like the worst time in the world. Look what they're
Exactly.
doing
So
here.
exactly. He's
What they're
saying
doing.
exactly. So he's saying is that Yitzchak.
That's like you did all the averas in the world, so you're stopping the shefa from coming down. Avraham
Exactly.
Avinu stopped the shefa from coming down. That's what he's saying.
Right. Exactly. So he's saying his Gemara continues. What happens with the certain? What happens? It says here. It says whoever is ma'aneg the Shabbat will be spared from. Also from. What is it called? From. It says here, and it says here, and then there's another one right after that says, it says here, whoever delights the Shabbat will be spared from the oppression of the nations. Okay, from the, I think it's called something umot.
Like Shiabud?
Shiabud, yeah, I think it's called Shiabud. Something like that.
Shiabud Malchut.
Shiabud Malchut. Thank you, that's the word. Thank you. V'lo tamar shamidat hadin lo yeh la reshut l'kater alav b'frat. Maybe you could say is maybe we shouldn't but he says don't say that even though Reshut Adin does not have does not have authority to advocate against us on Shabbat individually, maybe it can do it for a nation, right? He says rather he will be spared even from the oppression of the nations. That is, the Gemara is adding that whoever delights Shabbat means that even if the community deserves punishment, he will be spared. And you can just look around, and you can see the people who are Shomer Shabbat. You can see, there's this guy now who was saved from the Nova Festival, who started shaking Shabbat. He kept Shabbat. He said, while he was driving on during Simchas Torah, he's got tattoos all over his arms. He's saying is, I said by myself, Hashem saved me and my wife and my kids. We're keeping Shabbat. He now walks around, he's touring America now.
Really?
Touring America, saying is, I was driving the car like a mad person. Bullet holes came through the car. Not one person was, none of my kids, not my wife, not myself were injured. He said, I'm taking, and he said the entire time, I said, Hashem, we're keeping Shabbat. That's what he said. Hashem, we're keeping Shabbat from this moment.
I just learned today in Sahel, Menashe basically had the same thing. He was captured, and he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved me from it. He was trying to appeal to non-Hashem,
Yeah.
and then he said, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu
It's
saved me,
unbelievable.
I'll change my ways.
So it says,
And
if you look at this, if you look at the stories of people who are mamash accept the Shabbat upon themselves, within their personal circle, even though there might be trouble around them, those people who are mamash ma'aneg the Shabbat, they're protected. It sounds weird and it's hard to see it when it's happening, but when you take a step back and you say, look what's going on, and all of a sudden you say that Onei Shabbat, the things that we're doing, the positive mindset we're having is protecting us. So that's what he's saying here, and he says, look at this, and he says, and now one someone might say is, how can someone say
How
without?
tough could Hashem want us to be, though? Like,
Not exactly. So
how
he's
tough
saying,
can we be? We don't have a heart of stone, like it's like already, it's too much, like already.
yeah, it is. But he says what he says. Without it says that the marriage. Can we say that a person who's saying? How can we say that the Gemara? How can the Gemara say that without that? Basically, the Gemara is saying is anyone is. He says kol. I say kol ma'anegat Shabbat. Everyone. Shouldn't we say maybe we should say the tzaddikim? Shouldn't we say something like we should give some sort of the limit, right? He says no. He says maybe, he says if Abraham and Yitzchak come in, if Abraham and Yitzchak
In other words, why are you saying that if he kept Shabbat,
Right.
that oneg that he did was a spiritual oneg, and there's no mekatrigim on that oneg?
Right.
What did he do all the week?
Exactly.
He has
exactly.
nothing his whole life.
Right, exactly. So he's saying, how is it possible? Like you're saying, Avraham and Yitzchak were not spared. Kol v'chomer us. Like I mean, Avraham and Yitzchak had their sons were Yishmael and and Esav. God, al achad kama v'kama, us. He says, V'yesh lomar she'Avraham and Yitzchak shani. They're different. Shem lo shamru et Shabbat. Kedita b'Beishit Rabbi Parshat Yud Aleph Al Pasuk Vayichlol Shemayim. And Sham Aval Yaakov Shemat Shabbat. If you go to Parshat Vayishlach, he says that he quotes that it says he was able to keep Shabbat. So what is he really trying to say? And this is something that I also can say that.
What he was doing at Eruv there? What was he doing there?
He says there that he observed the rules of Chumim.
Wow.
And that by doing that, he observed the Shabbat. Now, again, I'm not going into the Drushim and how to explain it all, but I think what he's trying to get to here is that we see that people who are focused on Mamash, there are two things that he's saying here. One is that the very things that we usually during the week use to strengthen ourselves physically, meaning we eat, sleep, whatever it is, those things are important, but they're only important within a limit. Like we need to only eat a certain amount, right? We only need to sleep a certain amount. But on Shabbat we have a mitzvah to take those same things and turn them around and say these things are oneg for us. These are things that really help us, right? And then also he says this, and how do we prevent the mekatrigim during the week from doing anything negative from us by staying focused on the spiritual matters and staying focused on positive things, on Torah and Chesed and Chasadim and right, all those things. He says by doing that we're giving ourselves the ability to have the mekatrigim not even allowed to enter into our space. What he's saying is that by taking the things, the physical things that we otherwise during the week are there to prevent us from growing spiritually, on Shabbat, we're doing the opposite of it, and we're turning it around and becoming something positive. Just one more thing, and then I think one of the things he also says about Negat Shabbat. This is not something that he mentions, but the shir that I heard today about the Zera Shimshon, he says that the idea of Oneg Shabbat is not only the Shabbat itself, it's also actually Oneg Shabbat is to extend Shabbat, right? You were supposed to extend Shabbat a little bit before, a little bit after. The Gemara says, I forgot who it says, he says, I want to be like those people who kabel Shabbat in Tiberia and let Shabbat out, where? In Tzipori. Why?
They bring it early and late.
Because in Tiberia it's very low, and therefore Shabbat goes in
Early because the sun's gone.
Right, and then late in Tzipori because it's so high up.
They see the sun.
Right, so he says, so the guy said is that people who take upon themselves, even a few minutes earlier, like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
We do 18 minutes to candle lighting.
We do 18 minutes, but he's saying is do 5 more minutes.
More than 18.
Yeah, more than 18. He says take 5 minutes, just break Shabbat. It doesn't have to, you don't have to do anything special.
So the Arizal says a big school of Parnasah.
Yeah, he said it's
I have a friend of mine became a multi-millionaire from
Really?
scratch when he bring in Shabbos hours early.
Really?
Like the earliest you could do.
Really.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's saying, so these are the things that we should do. Throughout the Hashem, we should get to the point where we actually see the Shefa, Bracha, Shabbat, we should see it, we should see, the first thing we should see is, we should see Mamash, and everything that we do. Yes, you had a question?
A tiny statement first. It seems that it's also a matter of attitude. In other words, you can see entirely negative thing, and so the famous story with Rabbi Akiva and the fox, right? And strangely, today I learned in Sanhedrin a couple of cases where everybody wept and he was laughing. Like they went to visit Rabbi Eliezer,
Right.
who was apparently very sick.
Chaim.
Chaim.
Someone just needs to fix the
Go
electric.
upstairs and I don't know
I think it's here.
It's right here. It's right here.
It's right here.
Just put on a torch and
Or we could yell to the country.
Where is it?
Baruch Shem.
Anyway,
Lift to the top.
they went to visit Rabbi
here's
Eliezer, and
a-
all,
here's a door
all
here.
of the
It's like Shabbos Sukkot.
all of the students wept, and he was laughing. And they said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "Because I was worried that Rabbi Eliezer is getting paid off in
Right.
this world, and now I see that he's not getting paid off
Right.
fully in this world. So it's a matter of not just concentrating on positive, but actually seeing positive in everything.
Absolutely.
No, I'm certainly not gonna say that. I can do that, but it's nice to know about Rabbi Akiva. The question about Yaakov's progeny.
Yeah.
So, Zera Shimshon says that Yaakov had flawless, but
Mikatosh
we
Lemar.
know that's probably.
I always have that question when people say that. Not just here.
What was he
There's gotta be
asking?
then difference between.
Yaakov, we know that his Shvatim were not flawless. I mean, the Mechirat
They
Yosef.
made enough mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have Ishmael and Asa. Come
There's a
on.
difference between making mistakes
Can't compare the two, man.
and being part of
I
the
mean,
same nation.
They threw
and
one brother in the
being-
pit. These guys are killing thousands.
But you also can't say that
for
the
years.
difference is that because they made tshuva, because we know Ishmael did eventually make tshuva, and Esav also.
Ruben, you can't compare the two.
Right. That's my guess too.
And yet, he was sent off to be a separate
Who?
Ishmael.
Both of them.
Right, and Esau.
Which means what?
I'm saying,
The
even
chiluk
the
isn't
fact that
the
they
tshuva.
made tshuva didn't change at the end of their
They're
lives.
not part of Am Yisrael.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the Shvatim were not perfect, but they were considered the same Am.
Okay, so we're gonna take a break for 2 minutes.
Maybe not necessarily
No, go
they
back.
themselves
Go on.
as a result of Tshuva. They were back into the, what do you call it, fold.
But
But
they
their
were.
progeny was gone.
Exactly, exactly. Nachon.
Let me find the next one. Okay.
So that teaches us that if our children misbehave, that really isn't making them into Esau.
Right, exactly.
That would be a bit harsh.
Okay.
But
I guess
but in the Kutem Moran, Torah
Maybe-
Aleph
maybe I
says
missed it.
that
Yeah.
the Yetzirah, and he like
just trying to get familiar with the
he doesn't
style
want
of
to
the
see that he
Zera
doesn't
Shimshon.
want to
Like, what was the
connect
hook into
things
this
to Hashem,
parsha?
and
What
he
was
wants to
the
follow his tithe.
why is this here?
So every time
Shabbos.
somebody
Because
follows their
it's
tithe,
first aliyah of his
they're
Torah is we
actually
Shabbos.
giving power to their
That's
Yetzirah, which is Esav inside of them.
Right, but when someone says, oh, you are a Nazi, doesn't make that person into actual Nazi. That's just maybe a like Nazi. You're not being fair to
And a whole
each other.
Pshat why
Still not.
the beginning of the Parsha begins with Shabbat. So one of the ideas I thought of was that we have to get Chizuk, like Bechizas Shekel, the Kior, so many, we have a reference to Mordechai at the beginning of the Parsha, there's even Mordechai, here we are, Mordechai Menayim, where do we know Mordechai from this week's Parsha? Mordechai. So you see there's so much Chizuk before the Egel Azav, excuse me, and so much Chizuk after. Because Hashem would never put in a parsha such a difficult trauma like Egel Azav, such an Asoyan, without a lot of chizuk before and a lot of chizuk after.
Yeah.
And then when we end up in V'yakar Pekudah, we get back again with the Mishkan and we always Hashem's always
Hashem's
surrounding,
with us.
challenging
Hashem's
things
with us.
with a lot of shefa and bracha.
Bye.
Chaim.
Chaim.
So let me know when we're ready, yeah?
Speaking of L'chaim,
What are you looking for? Glen Liver or the
If they're up, like, I don't have it in me.
Kalila?
right?
I don't have it in me if they're up once.
I'm not a
You like
Rav.
Arak, no?
I'll take whatever. Yeah, whatever you
Pour
got.
into a cup,
It's,
or whatever.
Yeah, I'll take some of that.
Yeah, Parshat.
pristine.
You don't like it? It's too strong.
Yeah, I don't have it in me tonight. Long day. I'll fall asleep in the middle of the share.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Let's go.
For us, it's like our for me, it's my
Let's
gasoline.
go
It's not-
live.
This is my
Part
favorite
two.
day.
Not that I
I
go to
look
sleep.
forward to this part almost as much as almost this night.
That's the blues I go to sleep.
Baruch Hashem. Zera Shimshon. Ashrein.
Right. I'll ask you for a refill.
Yes, sure.
So, like, what? How would you sum up the Torah that Zera Shimshon is saying that?
The last Torah I would sum up as
I mean, could you say that Hashem just wants to give you Shefa and Sophie?
yeah, we just have to look.
And
We have to be fun. We have to find ways to rechannel our mindset to Dvarim Ruchaniim, to spiritual matters, and to recognize that Hashem is giving to us. And the only way we can do it is two ways. One is that during the week we protect ourselves with Dvarim Ruchaniim so that the Mekadrim can't come in. And on Shabbat we take those same things that the Mekadrim are looking for us to be diverted on Shabbat. During the week. On Shabbat, we take those things, the food and the sleep, and we turn them into...
Trick them.
Yeah, exactly. We take those same things, and we turn into it. Hashem gives us the mitzvah. He says you have to eat 3 full meals, sleep. That's the opposite of what you would think. But he says those are the things that we should focus on Shabbat, so that we during the week, we have the energy to protect ourselves with the other things. All right, so this one is a interesting one as well. It's a little bit of a...
Which one is it?
This is going to be Kaf Gimel 23. This is on page 472 in the Arch Scroll.
Kaf Gimel?
Kaf Gimel. It's a short one, relatively short one, but it's a nice one. Let's try to see if we can squeeze in one more.
Which Torah again?
Kaf Gimel, 23.
Oh wow, so many Torahs.
There's 25 or 26 Torahs, I think, this year.
Wow, maybe.
Yeah, there's like, maybe more.
So maybe the Kabashi.
Yeah, it's, there's one, and it's
You
30.
should make this out of Mom B'Simcha. How'd you get Simcha? More Torah.
Exactly. There's 30 Jerushim this week, so we're going to do number 23. So here, so it says here, in this week's part, right, so it says after the Cheta Egel, Hashem tells Moshe that he's no longer going to take.
He's going to send an angel with us.
Right, so hold on, we get to the angel. So he says, as Hashem says to Moshe, you're no longer going into Eretz Yisrael. Right?
Hashem already told him now.
Hold on, he's look what he says. He says he says so that he would not have to destroy them if they were to sin against Hashem. He would send an angel instead. Moshe protests. Moshe says, I don't want the angel. He says, look, im ein panecha olchim al telim mizeh. Right? Moshe says to Hashem, if your presence, Hashem, meaning in panecha, if your face, meaning your presence, does not go along with us, don't bring us. That's what Hashem, Moshe said.
What did Hashem say?
Hashem says, it says here, we'll read the psukim.
No,
No,
but that was the last part.
That was exactly. Hold
That's
on,
what he's asking.
Exactly. Hold on 1 second. We'll get there. Yes, slow.
Everybody calm down. There's a monkey cheer here. He's going to get control.
So it says, "Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe, lech alei mizeh." It says, "Lech alei mizeh." Ata ve'am. He says, "Go from here. Leave from here. You and the nation that you're Asher ha'alita me'eretz Yisrael, the people that you, being Hashem, saying to Moshe, take the nation that you brought out of Egypt, right?
Yeah, well, it's there, bro.
He says, take the land which I swore to Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and I told Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov that I will give it to their children.
Again.
I'm sending you a
So again.
Yeah, hold on. שלחתי לפניך מלאך וגירשתי את הכנעני והאמורי והחיבי והפריזי החיבי והיבוסי אל ארץ זבת חלב כי לא אלה בקרבך כי עם שרף אתה פן אכלך בדרך. Right, so he says.
So this is the kushia. Why there did he not object?
Very good. So that's his
Why
question.
here
Right,
is
exactly. That's exactly his question.
That's the question.
That's the question. Here he picks up his voice. Right, that's the question. Here he says, "What's going on?"
Here's the question.
No.
Okay, the question is in last week's parsha. It says, "Hinei anochi sholach malach lefanecha." Moshe doesn't say a thing.
crickets.
Right, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't say yes, no, why, who knows what, nothing. In this week's parsha, Hashem says, "I'm sending you a malach," and he says, "Absolutely not." Moshe gets back and gives him chutzpah. What's going on? How can it be that last week it's okay, this week it's not?
What's the distance between that promise in the beginning and
Just
this
1
one?
week.
From the actual
Timeline? From Yetziat Mitzrayim, it's not more than it's
Few months.
It's a few months.
Yom Kippur.
Right.
So in other words, it's not like he said something
No.
and Moshe said, "Okay, you know what? I'll just
Well,
wait."
Ah,
to
so
show the
you're
actual.
actually getting close to the answer.
Okay.
Your answer already is getting pretty close to what the answer is. It's okay. You know what? I used to have a teacher. I used to have a rub. People used to sleep in his class all the time. Right? They're tired, whatever. We're 7th graders. We were in 7th grade right there, and people were sleeping, and he'd say nothing. No one ever said anything. And then I went to yeshiva for a year. Same thing happened. And I had a different teacher. And then, we were sleeping. We were bums. Like most of us didn't listen and learn.
As long as
Your
you're there.
neshama heard.
Exactly. That's what he said. He said, "Your neshama is here." And I said, "Okay, it's okay. I'm not
Neshama
offended.
Kanievski.
I'm not offended by it at all. And by the way, really not. You'll see.
Oh, well, you're not in charge of Chinuch of my son, okay?
You still get started.
Chinuch of my son. And
I thought you wanted to behave yourself.
Anyway, so he says like this. But the question you got, everyone came up with the question. It says, "Ikshua mefarshim." Madua le'el, why in Parshat Mishpatim, which was 2 Parshat ago, 3 Parshat ago, it says, "Kshamar lo," when Hashem said to Moshe, "Hinei anochi sholech."
Shatak.
Right, Shatak Moshe, Ushtika al kodah damya.
They didn't care.
Right, he said, what did he say? Okay.
They accepted it.
Exactly.
Shtikodai, he accepted it. Okay, no, Hashem's not coming. Malach's coming. That's it. It's also good.
Shaya merutzah b'shluchot
You
hamelach.
want the base of Mikdash? No, you have the kotel. Be quiet. Shtikodai, you're happy with the kotel.
Right, so he says, "Ukayom nitra'im v'amar imein panach olchim." And yet this time he says, what? Absolutely not. Don't take us anywhere. How's that possible? What happens? What happened to Moshe? What happened to Moshe that made the switch? Right? There's got to be something that caused Moshe today to say absolutely not, and not yesterday to say, okay. What was the difference?
Nice.
Good question. It's a good question.
It's a good question.
It's a very good question. And by the way, it's not an original question to his, right? But Zera Shimshon, as always, he will take the same answer, he'll take the same question and find his own way to give a different twist. So he says like this. It says, V'nir'eh, D'ita b'knesset ha'gdola choshen mishpat siman kuf lamudchet b'hagat ha'tur sif kafet b'shem tshuvat ha'maharam. Now, again, based just from this alone, you could see how much of a Gaon he was. He lived in the 1700s, so he didn't have like all the access to all the computers and programs that we just like memorize and look up things and whatever.
What's our chokhmah?
Right, exactly. Like this guy knew the stuff backwards and forwards. He was able to quote it and name the places and everything. And he says, he says is when do we say that? When is we say to shtika koda, right? When do you say shtika koda? He says is we say is shtika davka b'makom sheshor tavuach lefanam. Only when there's an ox slaughtered in front of him. Meaning, as when he says when the damage is being done to his property and he is silent without making a claim. In that case, since he is quiet after the damage is already done, we assume that he has waived his rights to claim the damages. What happens? What he's saying is, let's say, I don't know, someone's
You say shtika kodada is not a rule.
right. It's not
It's
a rule.
only when you see nezek that's happening to you, and then you're quiet, then you accepted it.
Right. So let's just say, for example, right? I don't know. In front of our house, we have a car. Our car is parked in front of our house. Someone damages our house, our car, and we don't say anything. But okay, so we admit it. Then we see it. We did it. Whatever. Say okay, I accept it. Zero. Right? I don't start going out and saying whatever. I don't wait. At that moment, I accept it. Right? Shtika koda, I accept it right now. Right? That's it. That's when you say shtika koda, according to this, according to the Gaon and the Torah, kafet. He says in that case, since he was quiet after the damage is already done, then we can say that he waived his rights. Then we can say, okay, then I'm not take. Then I don't accept. Then I accept the responsibility of the damages. But let's say where he is not, the damage has not been done yet.
Why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see a difference between a malach and a Hashem?
Hold on. Patience, not that. Shwaya. It's not that. You're waiting. You're rushing. In order to run a marathon, what do you have to do first? You have to walk. You can't run a marathon tomorrow morning. You have to take your time.
He's not running marathon, no matter what you're saying.
Anyway, so it says here. So he says it's lo avekada. So he says, but what happens in the case where the damage has not been done yet? His silence, right? Let's say we know, right? If I give my car to a kid, right? I give the kid who doesn't have a license, doesn't learn anything yet, right? I know there's going to be damage to the car. It's guaranteed that's going to happen, right? But I don't know. Since I know that it hasn't been my silence now, I'm not admitting to the fact. I'm not accepting to the fact that the damage. I'm not saying I'm staying silent, right? Because I don't know. Maybe Hashem will give him a wonderful talent that he can drive, perfectly, but without a license and without any lessons, right? So he's saying is expected damage is not if I remain silent with something that hasn't happened yet. It's not my shtika. It's not. I'm not accepting it. My admission is not now. It's not happening. Because I don't know. It may not happen, right? Because he doesn't know. He doesn't want to respond to something that may not be will only be relevant in the future, right? Only because of right now, I see the damage right now. So therefore, I'm saying remaining silent. But later, if I don't know it's actually going to happen, why is my silence? I don't know that. Maybe it won't be actually happening.
It's a fairly basic idea.
Right.
We do it in life, at least I do it in life oftentimes. Like somebody states something, whoever that is, I don't like it, but it's in 3 months. I'm like, okay, let me sit in the what do you call it, and wait for Hashem to do something.
Like as they say in Hebrew, what do they say in Hebrew? Elohim Gadol, Elohim Gadol. We have a lot of time.
Yeah, so the first time he says, "Hine ani sholech lefanecha malach lefanecha l'shomorcha,"
Right.
it sounds much more loving, and I'm with you.
Right.
The second one is like, "Lech alem mizeh tavam." You go with your nation, and I'll send shalachti malach
Very
fanecha.
different, very
It's much different, and
Yeah.
Moshe Rabbeinu picked up on it.
Right, exactly. So look what he says. You're actually pretty close to what he says. So look what he says here. He says,
Pretty smart.
yes, he is. Afkan. So he says this is the same rule applies to here. Moshe, בפרשת משפטים שאמר לו, הנה אנוכי מושלח מלאך לפניך עד אשמך בדרך להביך למקום. In משפטים, when Hashem says to Moshe, look, I'm sending you an angel to protect you, to take you to the place that I made ready for you. Shatak Moshe lo chashav la'ashiv lo, why shadan lo haya yodea azman she'era rotzeh la'aviyam. Right? At that point, Moshe didn't know when. He didn't know, like you said, in 3 months from now, I'm going to take you to the land. I don't know what's going on. Between now and 3 months from now, who knows what's going to happen, right? So I don't have to worry about it right now. You know, it's like a theory. It says like, you know, I'm going to do something for you in 3 months, or in 6 months from now, 10 months from now. You know, between now and 10 months from now, let's all live and be well till then. You know, like that's the famous statement, right? That's what he said. Moshe's like, I'm sending you. I'm going to send a malach. Okay, I don't know when that's going to be. So that's what Moshe says. Okay, so I have nothing to accept, right? But then here, he said, I'm not going to respond about something that's going to happen maybe some downtime in the future. Like you said, right? The tone of voice is so different, right? He says, look, he says, that's why Moshe responds like the way he does today. Because he says, listen to the voice. Look at what Hashem said to him.
The tone.
The tone is different. It's totally different.
Is Hashem slightly irritated that Moshe didn't object?
In the first time?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Like,
He doesn't mention.
I'm going to send Angel.
Right.
Is that okay with you?
Right.
I mean, I'm not.
Right. I know, but he says it. He says right now when Hashem says to him, you know,
No, it seems like he didn't mind so much the angel. It's more like he minded
like it's
the energy. Like you're breaking up with me, take an angel, bye bye.
Right.
Saying-
No, it's like when you talk to kids and stuff like that, right? Sometimes you just say, just go do what you gotta do, right? Like you know, like just go do it, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
that's the
Your
thought,
wife,
right?
whatever you want.
Right, right, exactly. Right.
Here's my escort. Here's the royal escort. Or like here, take this guy out of here. It's the
Right.
same thing.
It's the same thing. It means the same thing.
The same chariot, the same horses, but a different.
A different tone, exactly. So he's saying is the tone is different, and therefore the first time, you got it. So the first time Moshe is saying is, okay, it's just nice. It's nice. It sounds beautiful, like you said, the pleasant. It's beautiful, right? I'm gonna send a nice angel, protect you, the whole thing. And here he's like, just get out of here. Just do it. Just go take your, but he's basically saying, take your damnation and get out of here, right? That's what he's saying. Pardon my French, but right, he's saying it's like just take him, right? So this is when Moshe says to him, now I have to protest. Now I have to give up a fight. Because otherwise, what is he saying? I don't want you to do it out of anger. He's basically, Moshe saying is, I don't want it to, Hashem, I don't want you to send the nation to Israel out of anger. You want my angel, I'm going to have an angel protecting me because you forced him to do it? No, I want you to do it out of love. I want you to do it out of ratzon, right?
And why Hashem is irritated?
Well, this happens, when does this happen?
Yeah.
Right after Chet HaEgel. Okay.
Yeah.
So he says here, look, it says here, Me'ata hayad devar b'ito, right? Hegish Moshe v'amar lo im ein panech holchim, right? Me'ata hayad devar b'ito ma tov. Because now it was a thing in the proper time is very good. This is what the correct time to react, because Moshe heard that indeed voice is objecting, because Moshe did not experience a change of heart as he had never agreed to this arrangement. He simply had no reason to object earlier. V'chol zehu tirutz lefi darkam. He says this is all based on all the mefarshim that we just explained. This is all, that's the whole answer.
That's like that movie, Ushpizin. No, say it 3 times. Mahul, mahul, mahul. Yeah?
Right.
If you really forgave us,
Right.
then no angels, you.
Right.
Yes. We only that way we'll see
So
that
now-
you really.
So now he says this. All of this was just according to what the mefarshim said. He hasn't given his opinion.
Then what? That the problem was that the malach's taking us.
Right, exactly. There's not, the words are the same, right? I can say the same exact sentence, but the sentence comes out the way I say something in 2 different times, the same meaning, right? One is go take out the garbage, and the other one is just get out of here, right? Go take the garbage, right? Take the garbage and get out of here, right? It's the same thing, but it means totally something else when you hear the tone of voice and what your person is saying, right? So the meaning is the same. Shari says that so far is all according to the mefarshim. Omnam l'didan kusha me'karolita. He says that there's something that was not, but in my opinion, their question was not difficult. He says, "Hare Moshe haya shluchan shel Moshe," right? He says that Moshe was shluchan shel Yisrael. Excuse me, Moshe shluchan shel Yisrael. Moshe was who Hashem was bnei Yisrael shaliach. V'yef shar lomar de mishtatak machal. He can't be
The first time when he was quiet, that he accepted it.
Right. She'en bi'ado ligra letanotam shel Yisrael. He did not have the ability to make.
He can't take away from his he's a shaliach.
Exactly. He has a responsibility. He can't give up that responsibility.
I sent you to fix, not to break.
Right. ואם כן, שתיקת השליח אינם כלום.
Yeah.
Right? He says is what? He says if Hashem, Moshe,
Shaliach messes up the messenger by being a shtigodah. It's nothing.
exactly right. He says, "V'od shesham lo amar Kadosh Baruch Hu sheyifaresh hadavar l'Yisrael." And there, in Parshat Mishpatim, what does it say? He just says, "I'm sending a malach." Right? He doesn't say Hashem doesn't tell Bnei Israel. It doesn't tell Moshe, "Go tell Bnei Israel." There, it's just Moshe and Hashem having a conversation. Here, Hashem is talking to Moshe and saying, "Moshe, tell Bnei Israel, I'm sending a shaliach." Right? So I'm sending a malach. Excuse me. Moshe Amar, Ata ve'ha'am ki am kshorafu. He says here, where Moshe, in Parshat Mishpatim, where Moshe and Hashem were having a conversation, a one-on-one, he says, okay, Hashem, you're telling me something, okay, I got it, I'm in their shaliach, I accept it, right? In other words, it's a one-on-one conversation, right? I have no reason to object. Why do I have no reason to object? Because it's just me and you talking, right? I don't have to, we can have a nice conversation, and that's it. But when you tell me, go tell Bnei Israel that I'm sending the shaliach,
And I'm their shaliach.
I'm their shaliach.
I have to do my job.
I have to do my job. And there, what happens? There, when I'm your
And I
shaliach,
can't do shtigodah.
and not only that, what happens when you have a shaliach? You have a tana. What's the tana of a person who sends a shaliach? I sent you to do something good for me. You can't mess it up for me. If I mess it up for me, what happens if a shaliach messes something up for you? I'm not responsible. Like, let's say I send you to do something for me, and then I send you to give $1 million to someone, or $1,000 to someone, and then you take that $1,000 and go away with it.
You
right?
still owe the $1 million. Then you're still in trouble.
Right, but
Right.
or he takes the money and instead of you, the classic Gemara case is, I give you money to go find a wife for me, and instead of me, you find
He marries his own wife. She's Mekudeshet.
She's Mekudeshet, but what happens? I can always say is, you messed it up for me. Right now, you did something for I wanted you to do something for me, and then you messed it up for me. So I'm not chayav. Me being the person who sent you. Why not? Because I asked you to do something good for me. You messed it up for me, so I'm going to be chayav. No, you're
In
going
other
to
words,
be
you can't tell Hashem that we want a malach instead
Right.
of Hashem when you're our shaliach.
Right, exactly.
Because we Bnei Israel want Hashem.
Right, it says here, "L'taknuni shedartich, v'lo tivtuni." I sent you Moshe. You're our shaliach. We help you. Your job. You have one job. Well, it's like this famous statement. You have one job.
to do.
We have one job to do. What's the job? Be our shaliach. What does that mean? You always are looking out for the best of us, right? Between when Hashem is talking to Moshe, saying is, "I'm going to send him to Malach." Great, wonderful, it's nice that conversation, one-on-one. But now he's saying is, "Go tell Bnei Israel." Oh, wait a minute, I have to tell Bnei Israel this? Now it's you're not talking to me about one-on-one. Now you're telling me as a shaliach, and as a shaliach, I have a responsibility to only do good for Bnei Israel.
Nice.
So the
That's
reasons,
great. I loved it. This is a great.
So the reasons for raising the objection we're not discussing. We're just discussing why he didn't object before.
What the reason? Say it again. I'm sorry. I missed
The
the question.
reason for this objection we're not discussing at all.
Sure we are.
We're only discussing why he didn't object before.
Yeah, right. The reasons for objection is exactly the reason why he didn't do it before. Why didn't you? Last time he didn't do
No,
it.
I mean he didn't object that he had brown shoes, not green shoes, right? All of a sudden.
I don't
Well,
understand.
okay, that's a little off, kind
don't
of.
understand.
My shot was a little too.
I don't understand the
out
question.
there. Why did he even object to begin with?
Because at the first time, you're saying in general.
Right.
Why?
I mean, the
You
fact
want
that
Hashem.
he didn't do it first time,
'Cause you want
but
Hashem,
he
you
did
don't
it
want a
second
malach.
time, and we question that, assumes that there was a reason to object. My question is, what is that reason?
You don't want a malach. You want Hashem to be with you. Hashem said, "I'm sending my messenger to take care of you." We said, "No, we want Hashem Himself. We want a
Because
messenger,
what?
a malach, because we want Hashem."
We're questioning Hashem's intentions, like, no, not good enough.
On the other hand,
Yeah, it's not good enough, is it?
So you come into my wedding, I'm sending a car, I'm saying I'm gonna send a car with the driver. He's like, no, you come and pick me.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Why is that?
We want
I have
Hashem to
nothing
come
else
get
to-
us. That's
I have
it.
nothing
That's the
else to-
Jews. That's the
The wedding
Jews.
is not cool enough
That's the
anymore?
Jews. That's the Jews. Zera
No, but
Shimshon.
that's the question I'm having.
He has a good question. He's saying, if Hashem said, "I'm sending you a malach,"
You say okay. Right.
but you see,
A malach.
the point is Moshe Rabbeinu realized that the reason why Hashem was sending the malach is because he was upset with us.
But he wasn't 3 months ago.
What?
He said the same thing. Or was it also already after that?
that connects to what we just heard now.
Angel now.
Before, it wasn't Hashem upset or not upset. It was Hashem telling Moshe, "This is what's going to happen." And Moshe says, okay, fine.
But it was also after the.
No, it was before. That was before. Parshat Mishpatim
Right.
was before.
No.
It was before. That was after the first luchot, but before the second luchot. So then Hashem is saying, "This is how I'm doing. This is the plan." Okay, that's the plan.
No
Great.
problems.
No
So
problem.
then what's the objection?
The objection is because afterwards we realized that he's brothers with us. He's upset with us. He wants to send a
Right.
messenger.
What happens is
We wanted
listen,
Hashem to
what happens-
stake us.
Here's the
It's like
example.
when the diplomat goes back and you lower the
Right.
relationship and you're
Right.
like, we have
No,
we're
what-
just an
what
agency.
happened? Right. What
From
happened?
what I'm hearing, the facts that you were presenting me,
Right.
gentlemen, don't convince me of that. Because if the first time, was he upset back
No,
then too?
not
No.
yet.
But he already said, I'm gonna send an agent.
Yeah, exactly.
So Hashem doesn't seem to change anything other than maybe.
The tone of voice.
The tone of voice.
Tony
So we
Voice is
realized
exactly right. That's the difference.
that's
So
enough.
maybe,
That was
uh,
enough. That was enough for us to Moshe Rabbeinu say, no, we don't want that. We want you.
Right. Exactly. The whole point here is it's not, and Zera Shimshon picks up on this, and this is not the first
Well,
time.
listen, if you want to come to the wedding, I'll send you my taxi driver to pick you up. That's what it is. If you really want to come to the wedding, I'll send you a taxi driver to come get you.
But I already promised you that I will.
Yes, but then
Right.
it was with a chauffeur and a Rolls
So,
Royce.
so
Now he's sending.
right,
a
his
taxi.
taxi. Right.
So it's like
What's-
it's the
what's
same
the-
vehicle.
Because I promised Avraham Avinu, so I'm going to send you a taxi.
So while the
first time-
plan didn't change, now
The tone of
something
voice-
else got
the
introduced
tone of
to
voice, right,
the plan
because- but there's
that
something-
made it unacceptable.
Right, it's exactly, but the 3 months, 3 months ago, or whatever amount of time between the two is, it's 40 days, or, 40 days between, right? Because it's, the first time was Vav Sivan, second time was, it's 60,
You get back, man. It's not the same without you here.
No, he's like, no,
Uh,
not a good.
Elul,
Same thing.
Tishri. So 5 months or 6 months later, right? What happens in between those 6 months? Moshe breaks the luchot. Why does he break the luchot? Because our egel is a right? So now we have chet egel in between. So the first time Hashem says, "I'm sending you my Rolls Royce." The second time he says, now you're getting my taxi.
I'm still taking you, but
I'm still taking, but I'm not doing it it's not out of love. It's more out of, okay, I have no choice. I made a promise, so I have to stick to the promise.
Relative.
Right.
Close relative.
Right. Exactly.
Moshe interferes and says, "Listen, you need to forgive us," and
Said if you're not
and to
coming,
show
no.
that
What did he
need to
say?
lead us.
He says it's.
Said if you're not coming with us, don't. If you're not coming to get me to the wedding, don't come. Don't come get
If
me.
you're not sending the chair, if the Rolls
I'm not
Royce,
coming.
I don't want
Forget
it.
it. Forget the whole thing.
Right.
Forget the whole
We don't have a
story.
wedding planned yet, so please
Right.
don't take that mashal any further than
Where's this?
No, I'm just
where's
talking
this-
in your language.
where's-
I'm just talking to you in your
Where's the
language.
what?
Your clock.
cars and weddings.
Because it's like, either I'm looking at it, I'm like, something,
America.
either this is wrong or this is wrong. I'm not sure which one. If this is right, this is wrong. Okay. We'll try to do one quick, short one, and one other short one.
I never saw it before, honestly.
Okay. Anyway, so it says here, we'll do one last
Which
one.
one?
Kaf Hay, 25.
Well,
Kaf Hay. I think we did this one before last year. I think.
Hazara.
Where?
No, I was just joking. Yeah. Picture of him.
So,
Which number we doing?
Kaf Hay, 25. Page 494 in the art scroll. I feel like one of those guys at shul.
At Shul.
Yeah.
In the
Yes,
Art
why
Scroll
mention
edition.
Right, and that's the so page 95. Okay,
Is a
So-
Hirschman.
95 or 59? Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara Nedarim says, Amar Rabbi Yosef.
That was a Gewalt, that Torah, the
It's
truth.
very nice.
Very nice.
It's very nice. It's also, by the way, it teaches a lesson on how we say things to people.
Yeah.
Right? The tone of voice can change everything.
Everything.
But I think we've learned that similar to something like that before with the Zera Shimshon.
It's like a good advert for Grammarly.
Yeah.
You know? Does the
Yeah.
change.
Just a little bit of turn, right?
As long as it's free.
Anyway, so he says like this. Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina.
Silly.
Right.
No, just like Netflix ask you all these different apps when you get rid of them, Baruch Hashem, they ask you, why are you getting rid of us? I wrote, because I'm a Jew. What's that mean? Because I don't want to pay.
All right. So it says here.
The Dorim.
Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina mitchila lo nitna haTorah elo leMoshe lezaro.
Havdalah.
What?
What did you say? Havdalah?
Okay.
Kafeh. So he says, Moshe originally Moshe was the only person the Torah was only given to Moshe and his offspring. Thank you. Shneimar Ketov Lecha Psol Lecha Ma Psaltan Shelcha Yeh Aftivatan Shelcha Yeh. So So he said, Gemara in Nedarim says, it says here, the Torah was originally given to Moshe and his offspring, his descendants, as it says, Tov lecha and Psol lecha. Right? Ma psol.
This is the first luchot or the second luchot?
This is the Psol lecha, Tov lecha, Psol lecha. I think it's the second.
Yeah,
Right,
second.
second one.
This
Yeah.
Parshat.
Yeah, this is the Parshat. That's why it's
Right, because Hashem said, "I'll destroy Bnei Israel. I'll make a
new
people from
nation.
you,
Right.
a new nation."
So he says here, it says here, Psol lecha and Tov lecha. It says that the words that you write, the words that you write will be yours, and the Torah and the psolta, meaning the fragments, the stuff that you carve out, right? Just like you're carving something, so too will be the things that are
You see,
coming
that's
out.
why Hashem loved Moshe so much. Look, Hashem told Moshe, "Listen, I'm gonna knock them out. We'll make a new nation. They'll all be good from you." Moshe Rabbeinu said, "No.
I want this. That's not what he's asking, but let's see what he says.
Many years ago, I said, let me reboot the computer, and the guy said, well, you're nuts, let me find the problem.
Anyway, so he says here, Makshima Olam. There's a very famous question on this month. Ma tzorach la'akesh, right? Why do we have to say psol lecha and tov lecha? Why do we need that? V'alo kishem shemilat lecha hakatuv etzel pasul. Psol, excuse me, psol.
To carve, it's to carve, no?
Right, yeah, you're right. I always make a mistake that way because the patach is the other psol, like psol. But anyway, he says, "Anu lemdim sheyu psol et shelo." Af mitav lecha katuv etzel katav. So the Gemara, there's a very famous question. It says, and it says, why do we need, just like it says psol lecha, it says lecha. So can't we say that obviously the ketov lecha is also, meaning we don't need both.
Meaning you don't need the
word lecha.
action, you could just use the word lecha
Right.
as the comparison.
Right, exactly. You don't need, if we see that says psol, then we also need, it says psol lecha, then you just say ketov. Right? It doesn't have to say lecha. It doesn't have to say psol lecha and tov lecha. You don't need it both times.
Well, actually, you do, because psolatan shelcha yeheh is the shariot of the sapphire.
Right.
You're chipping away. Just because I told you that the leftovers is going to be for you doesn't mean that the actual letters are also yours.
Okay, but the question is.
So the kushya doesn't stand on.
Well, that's what he's saying. Hold on a second. He says here. So he says we have to explain like this. He says that the term yourself, meaning lecha. And he explains why, Zera Shimshon is going to say is why we could not use the word, why couldn't we make the hakesh between psol lecha and tov lecha, like your question, right? So he says, every other time that the word says, the word lecha is mentioned, right? Every other time,
The lulav,
right? Lulav,
tzitzit.
exactly. It says here, "Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzrot." That means take from your own silver and make a chatzotzrot. Kach lecha egel ben bakar means take from your own money and buy yourself a egel, right? V'kamo shekatav b'maharsha, the Maharsha writes, "Uve'elu hashtaim I efshar lichora lidrosh behem kach." The Maharsha says, in these specific two cases, ketov lecha and psol lecha, you cannot say. Impossible to say the same thing. It's impossible to say lecha being from your own thing. It's impossible. That's what the Maharsha says. I'm not saying.
He gets
It
the.
was sapphire.
Hold on a second. He says Harei luchot hayu shel snapirion, like you said, sapphire. Right. He says the luchot came from sapphire. V'efshar shemoshe yaseh mishlo. It was not possible for Moshe to have made it from his own property.
Why is that the big kushya?
Hold on
Why?
a second, hold on.
Why? You can't have a big chunk of sapphire?
So he says, why is that impossible? He says it is.
Because it was written Geluchot Esh or something. And he was like,
He's gonna get to the source in a second. It was not possible Moshe to have made it from his own property. So too with regard to the words when it says Ketov lecha, it would be understandable if the Aseret Dibrot were written with dio, excuse me, not biado, bidio with ink. Right?
Kol mezadyo.
Right? It says ein makom lomar she'aseh zot hachakika mishalo she'ein ba mamash. Right? El Torah. He says here one word.
Because when you're chipping away, there's nothing there.
What are you doing?
You're chipping away from the stone. Madalecha, what's yours? The air?
Right, exactly.
The air between the stone is yours?
When you're writing something with ink, right? So then you could say write for yourself. Because I'm writing something. Right? But when I'm doing something,
like
I'm
a true
carving.
artist.
When I'm carving something, what am I doing? I'm actually
The air between the
I'm not
air
doing
of the
anything.
stone?
Right, I'm not doing anything. Like I'm carving, I'm itching away. The only thing that proves that I've done something is the hard work that I put into it. Right? In other words, he's saying this. Look what he says. It says,
the residue that's taken out.
It can't be that the engraving is from his own property. The engraving itself is nothing. What am I doing when I engrave something? I'm actually taking something out. I'm not writing. When I'm writing, I'm using my physical
There's a
hand.
kushia on the kushia of Razal. The Razal are saying if it told you Psal Lecha, it includes the Ktav Lecha.
Right.
Michelangelo spent his entire life taking a stone, taking away the unnecessary stuff. Boom, you got Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever.
Right, but the point is that what he's saying is that when you can't explain it to say lecha meaning from your own property.
Yeah.
Because when I'm engraving something or when I'm working on a stone, what am I doing? I'm actually taking away stuff. I'm not doing something. I'm not taking my own property and creating something. I'm taking something out. I'm doing the opposite. Right?
Oh.
Right? When I write something, when a sofer writes something, what do? I take a
Take
geo
geo.
and I write something.
Take
And
ink.
I'm making something.
He takes a beautiful piece of paper
And makes it
or
dirty.
right.
Right, exactly. But here I'm taking a stone and I'm
Chipping
undoing.
away,
I'm
now
chipping
you have
away from
less of
something.
a-
So-
Chipping away to the,
Right, so
But
there,
increasing
what's,
the value.
he says, yeah, but he says, but what's the only thing that's formed?
his work.
His work,
That's what he has. Is his work.
right? His effort. It's effort. The only thing you have when you do something like that is your effort. When I write something on a piece of paper, I can see what I did, right? But what do I have? What do I get paid for? What
Adding, you're adding.
right?
When you're writing paper, you're adding.
You're
Here
adding
you
right
just-
here. I'm
you're just
subtracting.
like
I'm taking out.
But wasn't
Exactly.
there a thing
What?
about the fact that the
When I'm-
psalm of
when
it
I'm-
was given to him? Because
Hold on, we're gonna get there. What happens when I write something on a piece of paper?
Yeah.
I'm actually adding ink onto the paper.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm adding value to the
Nice.
paper, right? Okay, that's what he's saying. He's saying I'm adding value, but when I take a stone or a
You
piece
chip
of wood,
away, you take
I'm
it
carving
away.
out. I'm actually I'm getting paid to take away. Not, I'm not doing the opposite of what you would think.
Nice.
So that's what he's saying. So this makes sense. It's not his. It's not Moshe saying. It's Hashem is not saying Moshe, do take from what you have.
Rabbi Nachman says from the Gemara here, Psal Lecha, that whoever goes through the Torah really, like Moshe Rabbeinu, Yehuda Nasi, and Rav Ashi, that the whole Torah goes through you, the Psal Lecha, the psolet that you get is Ashirut.
Ah, nice. So he says here, look what he says here. Torah. It says here. That's why Kashil Lehu Rabbi Utim Zerchanon Bracha Derashat Elo Shtei Lecha Kim Esapsol Lecha Ukto. So he says that this is why Moshe did not. He says here that when you see Psol Lecha and Ktov Lecha, right? Moshe did not possess the sapphire necessary for carving luchot, and since the luchot abri did not really need any materials, they couldn't say for yourself, meaning take it from your own money. It's not every other place lecha. I can understand why, because there it means buy for yourself. Make for yourself a chatzotzra, a horn, a trumpet. Buy an egel in order to give a sacrifice. Here, lecha doesn't make sense. So he says that's why here it doesn't make sense, and therefore it wouldn't make sense for in this case for Moshe to provide his own materials. Now he's going to say. Now we're going to explain exactly what we just talked about before, which is that Hashem. The avanim tovot that Moshe had, the psulat, etc. Now we're going to get to that point. He says, "Omnam lachashem atzinu midrash b'Yerushalmi d'shkalim machzav shel avanim tovot haralo hakadosh baruch hu Moshe b'toch halo v'amar lo psocha." So the midrash, he quotes Kohelet Rabbah, says that
Showed him
a wonderful
in his under his ground,
right,
under his tent.
right, filled with
A
stones.
machzav, no, it was a machzav.
Machzav here, it says a quarry of precious stones.
How many people do you know in the world that carry around a few huge pieces of stone just in case? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, take all of your silver and gold, givaldic. So I don't have any, but many people do, right? So it's more of a you can assume that
Right.
a person has it.
Right here.
Like, can you please drive to the front? Most likely you have a car. It's
right.
very, very likely. But if I'm going to ask you to drive a tractor to the front,
Right.
what are you talking about? I'm not a farmer.
Right.
So why would Hashem assume that Moshe
That's
has
exact-
two humongous
That's exactly what
things
he's
of
saying.
Alex,
Right.
a little too specific
Right.
to carry around, just in
Right.
case?
So that's what he's saying. He's saying is
Ah.
first of all he's saying is it can't be lecha. In every other place you could say lecha makes sense.
Right.
Lecha means from your property. But here, how is it possible that Hashem is expecting Moshe A to have the stones and B lecha means I'm usually adding something. I'm not detracting something. So he
What was
says,
it, like a amma? Shesh tfachim al shesh tfachim?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think Gemara mentioned
Very
it.
happy.
Or shesh amot?
Either way, so he says Hashem shows Moshe a wonderful quarry of precious stones under
Under his tent.
Under his tent, exactly. V'amar lo psolacha, he says, take for yourself. Im kain gam zeh halecha samuch lepsol. According to this, right, the term for the lecha next to the word carve, that is next to the word psol, yicholim an lidosh k'mo shar lecha k'tuvim Torah. Da'anu she'aseh mishalo. This is why it says psol lecha. And that's why he says from you, from your own. Why could you, now once we understand that Hashem showed Moshe from underneath his own tent that he had the stones. In other words, he didn't even know he had the stones there. So Moshe says, what does Hashem do? He opens up his tent and he says, take for yourself. It's your own. Here, it's yours. You have it. So lecha means take from your own, just like every other lecha that we just had. Da'anu she'asem mishalo. Sharei kvar hayu lo avnim b'toch halo. He already had in his tent. Shekvar netana mo Hakadosh Baruch Hu matana. Right? Hashem gave him the gift. He just didn't know it was there. Like you said, right?
When Hashem says do something, you don't need to look in your pockets. But I don't have that.
Right.
If Hashem said, you have it. It's
Right.
under your tent or somewhere else.
Right, exactly.
Don't worry.
So that's
If he
exactly what he's
said,
saying here.
You must have
That's
it.
what he's saying. It's Ramaz Azeh Amruz Chazal, Psoltam Yeshacha. That's why it says Psoltam means that even the psolet will also be yours. Why? So he says that Mizesh Mashma Shayu Shalo means that it was already belonged to him. When it says Psolet Yeshalcha means that even the remnants, the stuff that you carved, will also be yours. Wait a minute.
Because it was yours from the beginning.
It was yours from the beginning. Exactly. You just didn't know it was there. Hashem had to show Moshe that he had the stones underneath his tent in order to tell him that Psol Lecha means just like every other place it says Lecha, it's yours, so to here. You just didn't know the stones were right underneath it. It's the same thing. It's a great
Kidney
mashal.
stones.
Right.
Don't know
It's a
you
great
have it.
mashal. We just sometimes don't know that the precious stones are underneath our tent. We just have to look for them. Right? It says it says here, whatever shavings are carving. Oh, sorry, I made it skip the line. Right? Therefore, Moshe, Hashem's telling Moshe, you can act like the owner of the house. Why can you act like the owner of the house? Because it says Masha Harash Motzi B'Matzad. Whatever shavings a carpenter removes from with like a hard with a matzad is like a hard
A large like razor.
like a large razor, right? Belongs to him. Meaning it belongs to the person, the carpenter. But when he chops off with a hatchet, means what? Like he chops off aggressive and a big thing, right? Those it belongs to the owner. In other words, the Gemara is saying that Hashem told Moshe, the fragments will be yours. It does not mean that the fragments would become Moshe's, but rather that they already belonged to him because the sapphire, the wonderful stone that he had been what? Taken from his own tent. So just like the wood chips that fall in the course of a work of a carpenter belong to the owner of the wood, the sapphire fragments that would fall in the course of the carvings belong to Moshe. That basically what happens is that the Chachamim already told us that when it says Psol Lecha and Ketov Lecha, it's just like every other Lecha in the Parshat in the Torah.
Because the Hashem gave it to Moshe already in his tent.
Right?
So first he knocked out the Jewish, then he said it is really like that.
So he says here, look what it says here. No, he's not saying it's right or wrong. He's basically saying I'm explaining to make sure that you understand. Right? He says this is why they assumed, this is why they made the hekesh. Shegam Ketov Lecha Ratzah Lomar Ketov Lecha Mishalcha. Dahainu Shatorah Itah Shel Moshe. That the Torah itself belongs to Moshe.
Oh, but in the beginning, the first Jewish, he knocked out Chazal.
Right. So
he said, how could they learn that from Ktav Lecha, Psal Lecha is yours, right? Now he's coming back, he's saying it is the same like Chazal said, that the Psal Lecha is, Ktav Lecha, it's all yours. Because Hashem already gave it to him in Matana.
Right. So that's what I think he's saying. Yeah. So what he's saying is that.
I mean, that's what I got. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
He says the phrase "writing for yourself," the Ketov Lecha, write for yourself from your own property. Dahainu Shatorah Itah Shel Moshe. Right. I'm just going to finish it. Kvar Natna Lo Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matana. K'mo Machzav Shel Avinim Tovot V'Hinei Inam K'mo Shar Lecha Ketuvim LaTorah D'Mashma Shelcha. So now the question is, he says, they ask a question, like you're right, they ask a question, how could it be that we shouldn't be able to derive this? Okay, so then he says...
If the Psal Lecha, now it goes back to the Jewish in the beginning.
Right.
If the psalecha is yours,
Right.
then also the tavlecha is yours because it's already all yours from the beginning. In the beginning, he knocked it out. He's saying no, he's carving away. It's not his.
Right, no, right.
Now he's bringing it back to saying it all is like
Because the original sapphire was his from the
yeah.
Right, exactly. Originally, we said that you can't even. Right. So I think what he's saying is that.
Just like the balabait.
Right.
When the guy's cutting away, the dirt goes to the balabait.
Right.
The wood. So just like that, Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem told him
It
psalecha,
means yours too. It's already yours.
it goes to the balabait, and you're the balabait.
Exactly.
You're basically the carpenter and the balabait.
Wow.
Perfect on time. Shkoyach.
Mordechai.
Zak,
Chazak. Once again, Charles texted me last night and says, am I on camera?
No.
Okay.